Okay, back to the demo. I'm now equipped with both dark chocolate and water, so I should be able to go for another couple of minutes. The next two use cases we want to look at are capacity planning and then adding an additional compute node. We need to identify when to do a capacity increase, and then we want to do a zero downtime execution of capacity increases. Now, the infrastructure usage metrics that you saw before can be interpolated by the Cloud Forms to determine when in the future the capacity of the underlying infrastructure will actually be exceeded. It also helps us to identify limiting metrics such as storage, CPU, or memory, so that we know why we actually need to increase capacity. And this allows us to plan the infrastructure expansion ahead of time and not to frantically scramble when suddenly capacity runs out. The next use case, and we'll just mix that right in, is actually rolling out the hypervisor and potentially software-defined storage from central infrastructure lifecycle management tools. So we have, again, a single pane of glass to actually manage the lifecycle of all the different infrastructure components. So I'm going back into the cloud management platform, Cloud Forms, and log in as admin. And I navigate to optimize planning and look at all the virtual machines. And what I'm doing here is I select a workload which is representative of the workloads that are that make up the load of my infrastructure or of my cloud environment. So for example, I could have a representative workload like a virtual machine that represents an application server, and I would look at how many of those virtual machines can my infrastructure run, how much capacity has it to run those workloads before some limit applies. And the interesting thing is it does not use the static configuration of those virtual machines. So it does not look at it has 2 gigabytes configured and it has 20 gigabytes of disk space, but it really looks at the actual allocation. So how much of that memory is actually allocated in the hypervisor, how much of that disk space, if you have thin provisioning, is actually allocated. So it uses that real consumption data, not that static configuration data, to then give me a analysis, and it tells me that I could run 118 of those virtual machines in my environment. If I look into the details, I can even see why it tells me 118, because the limiting factor is not the amount of virtual CPUs. Here we could run 512. It's also not the disk space. We would have a capacity to run actually 165 of those virtual machines in my cluster, but the available memory is the limiting factor. So it does not help to add additional disks to my environment. It does not help to add additional CPUs to my environment. I really need to increase the available memory in my environment. We can even download this again as a spreadsheet for further analysis. And you could also imagine that this is being sent regularly as a report to an administrator, so he doesn't always have to go into the system, rather he has it in his inbox every morning. Another way of looking at it is to go into the utilization menu. Here it is. And look at the various different utilization trends. So I'm selecting my virtualization environment again. And again, it takes a while until the graphs are calculated. And here I can get a prognosis of how the capacity of my cluster compares to the actual load. And we have an interesting thing here. At the moment, the utilization is trending down. So we used to have a much higher utilization and now it's trending down. I assume this is a reason because we had a vacation time and there are probably less virtual machines started than before. If we go to 4 weeks, let's see if this changes anything if we calculate the trend for the past 4 weeks. And here we see, okay, the utilization is increasing slightly, but we still have 1 year time. So we could even look into a detailed report and get a line graph. And if we had strongly increasing CPU or memory utilization, you can see those graphs crossing one. So blue is the available capacity, orange is the consumed capacity. The trend of the consumed capacity interpolated in the future, let's put it this way, and we could even graphically see when that line crosses that threshold. In this case, since utilization is rather flat, we probably have a year time to plan ahead for our capacity increase. And again, we can also look at this again in a report form. We can get this sent out via email. We can download it as a PDF. So you have all the different functions of a report here in order to be able to plan your capacity. Now that let's assume it's not a year in the future, but maybe 4 weeks in the future, we have acquired the required hardware. We actually do want to perform our installation of an additional compute node. So there we switch over to the OpenStack, Red Hat Enterprise Linux OpenStack platform installer to perform the upgrade. What I did before is in our environment, as I said, the control nodes run in REV, in Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. The compute nodes, however, are bare metal compute nodes. And I'm here in the hosts tab. You see right away an overview of our environment, and you can see there are 3 instances that represent the controller that run in REV. And there are 2 hypervisors at the moment that run the compute platforms, Nova and the Neutron networking. Actually, if we're looking into the OpenStack platform itself, let's just do this, would pretty much see the same information. So we have 2 hypervisors running there at the moment. And we do want to increase the capacity now, so the goal is to add another hypervisor. What we did here is I already launched the new bare metal node in the virtual LAN of the installer, and it already discovered it, booted it into a pre-boot environment, and it is now discovered, and you can see where there is this hardware node actually being discovered. And we can see some interesting facts about this platform. So we can see, for example, it is an Intel machine. What else could be interesting? We could take a look at the serial number, the BIOS version, the board serial number to identify it. We could look at the MAC address. So there are a number of facts available for me to properly identify the compute node properly. And in the future, with OpenStack Installer 7 and selected hardware, we can even ensure that BIOS configuration is correct before actually attempting the install. But basically look at the last 3 digits. Those are important to distinguish them. This host is the one that we actually want to provision a new compute node on. So I'm moving over to the OpenStack Installer deployments overview. And what I can see here is we have one RHEL OSP 6 deployment. However, there could be even additional deployments. So this installer is a single pane of glass for multiple different OpenStack environments. And I'm opening RHEL OSP 6 as deployment, and I'm presented with an overview of what is being installed as part of that deployment. You can see 3 controllers had been deployed, 2 compute nodes with Neutron networking had been deployed, and I'm adding the system with 8A4, the last 3 digits, to it. Assign hosts. And this takes just a couple of seconds. And what you can see now is once it disappears, that dialog, 2 nodes are already deployed and 1 is assigned to be deployed. And there's one task that I still need to perform. I need to configure that node. Specifically, I need to configure the network. Which network interface is supposed to host which component. And here I move the API down to the free network interface. I'm not assigning the external network because in the networking setup that we have done, the external networking is actually done through the controller nodes, so the compute node does not need an external networking. I hit done, and then I can actually deploy that node. I just need to confirm that the network has been configured for that host properly. Once I've done that, I hit deploy, and now the deployment takes place. The machine has rebooted multiple times. The software is installed on that machine via Puppet, and that probably takes another 20 minutes to 30 minutes until that hypervisor is available. So I will revisit this additional compute node later, and we might at one point in time see a new hypervisor turning up in that overview as well. This brings us to the next use case while we're waiting for the deployment to take place.